And we're live. Yo and hello. If you're from the Dallas Fort Worth area, you might recognize that as an old Randy Galloway radio host introduction. Hey, thanks for joining us. My name is Lucas Hamrick. I am the Chief Executive of OR Systems, and this is our weekly podcast for Vet Connect. We get on and talk about all things veterans content, video games, and things of that nature. Thank you for everybody tuning in for episode 5. Um, One of the things we're kind of like looking to do as we start to take shape with the show is provide a little bit of structure and being good little Army disciples. What is structure? Structure is a mission statement and a vision. So some of the things we're playing with early with the mission statement is we just want to build resiliency into the veteran community. That's simple, easily achievable, but you're never finished doing it. So gives us the opportunity to grow in that several different directions and interact with a couple different stakeholders as we get bigger. The vision, really simple. Use the network to crowdsource solutions for current and future veterans problems. We are a resilient. I always tell everybody it's the world's biggest fraternity. Um, and setting that fraternity in motion to figure out how to keep us from self harm, becoming destitute or disconnected from society. Let's make progress with what we're doing. So, big shout out to everybody who's tuning back into the show. If you're new to the show, welcome. We're excited to have you. Want you to grow with us as we continue to expand our opportunities into Twitch, YouTube, and a couple other content locations. Last week's episode, we had on Rick Lamb, a soft icon. Rick's a member of our video game content as well. He's a member of our team with being in the video game. His bio is pretty extensive and long, and you can go check it out on withthem.co, the website for our game that we're building, which looks to leverage therapeutics in video games to help veterans in some capacity, with the end goal being mental wellness and just part of that resiliency strategy within the community as well. Really neat part about Rick, man. He had some. He's a history buff too, so he came on the show. He's all decked out in World War II war garb and had his accoutrement of machine guns to bring on display. If you get the opportunity, go back into the historicals and watch the episode. It's really good. Rick's a very smart dude, super engaged with the veterans community, loves to help. So he is a great resource and just an advocate for all things veterans, which is nice. Some of the feedback we got from that discussion from talking with some folks is really, really interesting content. Great perspective on some challenging veterans issues. So if you get the chance, go back, take a listen. Today we're going to kind of like wave top a few concepts. We're kind of refining some of that structure. We're going to talk about some a comprehensive look at supporting veterans during and after service, with the transitions being a key focal point for a lot of that stuff. That's where you generally get tripped up. The military doesn't have a really, I say doesn't have. They're building a better transition process for. Rick was not last week. It was Brian. Brian that was on the guest show. Sorry, that leaked together in my head. So yeah, Brian runs Opline, which is a company that helps write transitioning people's MOSs into resumes. My apologies for that. Both great content. Brian's service is free to use. Go check it out. in the historical link. Sorry about that. Got twisted around there for a bit. We're all on some type of holiday schedule with Sean being out. That's why I'm here by myself. Nick's manning the engineering desk on the other side of the conversation, probably laughing at me for stumbling my way through that. But that's neither here nor there. Some of the neat concepts within the show, we'll talk about, just support for veterans, some of the programs that are available through the VA. In a previous life, post transition, I did a year as an chief of operations for a nonprofit where really got to help transition them into the digital space, which was neat, taking something from the analog paperwork processes and bringing them into an online presence. So I've got some experience with that. I've written two ebooks, one on dependent educational assistance and the other on the vocational rehab, which is now going by a different name. I started doing some additional homework, helping one of my friends locally here. Today's concepts are pretty interesting and expansive. So, as always, this is not an all-encompassing answer to these questions or any situations that we may have, but just know that you need to be capable of looking further into something or seeking out deliberate assistance when engaging on some of these other opportunities. So when we get to talking about dependent educational assistance, you have to, what applies to me may not apply to you. So you'd have to go through and kind of get some pre-qualification processes with the VA. Their websites are usually pretty useful, helping you determine eligibility for specific programs. Speaking of programs and supporting veterans and their families, we'll start the section one or segment one of the show, talking about some of those lesser known VA benefits. So I'm helping a recently transitioned service member in my local community deal with going to school and helping him engage with some of the additional programs that come with enlisting from the state of Texas. So in addition to the VA's programs, you also get some Texas-specific funding where you get 126 hours of state-sponsored education as well. That doesn't really cover everything in the same capacities as the GI Bill, but it's just a supplemental program that most veterans in Texas can use in addition to their GI Bill if they need. There's programs out excessively throughout all 54 states and territories that are specific to your state. And I would suggest you do a little bit of homework or find anyone with experience. You can kind of go to some of the VSOs and things like that in your local area to help you become more acquainted with stuff that's local to you. Currently, I am using the Dependent Educational Assistance Program. I'm 100% service-connected disabled with the VA. So that makes me eligible for a separate program. So knowing where to look for some of these additional programs can provide some additional resources for you or your family. But the Dependent Educational Assistance Program allows for dependents to be eligible for a separate program outside of the Chapter 31, Chapter 33 programs, is different allocations of CMPF or military funding for appropriations and authorizations. And that allows my family to go, or my dependent to be a full-time enrolled student. They get something that's similar to a GI Bill structure, a little bit different in the execution of those, but they manage their own VA profile and login and school validation and all that stuff as well. So there's additional programs out there to look for when you transition outside of the active component. And we are live from 10 minutes ago. Okay. Uh, Let me get my wits about me. So like I said, I'm by myself today, so it's a little bit going to be a little bit slow for adjusting to things. So bear with me. All right. If there's anyone out in the internet space who has any VA needs, wants, desires, or knows about any additional specific VA benefits or programs not readily discussed on this content, feel free to hop in as well. Um, but like getting into real life examples of the dependent educational assistance program, my wife is eligible to go back to school. She's going starting school in the fall as a result of me being meeting the qualifications for that benefit. So she's getting to go back and do some undergraduate studies. All right, sorry, just getting a little show update there. In addition to some of these VA programs, like the vocational rehabilitation and employment assistance is a great program. It's basically 5 different subcategories within the VRNE domain that each individual can kind of pick a track if you qualify for the vocational rehabilitation. That's changed significantly since I, put together the body of work on it. So I'd have to go back and kind of touch on that again to kind of re-blue on some of the information. But it's a great opportunity, and that falls outside of your GI Bill framework as well. So if you need to completely expend your GI Bill resources on your undergraduate studies, and you're still having some educational challenges getting gainful employment post-military experience, you can qualify for the VRNE educational track to continue getting some additional educational resources provided to you to seek gainful employment. Some of the, like I was talking about previously, some of the opportunities for that kind of lie within the nonprofit world that's accessible and available to each individual user. Anything from American Legion, Wounded Warrior Project, VFW, DAV. I mean, the list goes on and on. Your Google query can point you to hundreds of different resources. What's really neat is some of the work stuff that we have going, set in motion with the game, and tying and bringing together some of those resources has started to populate into some of my community relations with veterans as well. So it's fun to be able to cross that line to blend profession with personal experience. So that's exciting for me. I'm looking forward to continuing to progress and help reduce ideation, soldier suicide, and things of that nature in my local area, as well as what we're doing here at OR with with them and Vet Connect. Specifically, it's neat to be able to kind of figure out ways to nest those opportunities in the same capacity. So I'm excited about that. So like the nonprofit world's getting pretty savvy with like figuring out they need to do things a little bit differently as well. We've recently seen some of the other nonprofits partnering to get the opportunity to kind of collaborate and collectively voice the message. So I think Regiment GG on Discord, if anybody's familiar with them, they recently partnered with the American Legion to kind of changed the way they help people associate with the American Legion. I'm also an American Legion member of my local post. I am the judge advocate for my post 483. Pretty fun stuff. It's a neat, like I said, crossing over the two domains for me is a nice welcome uh, reward for connecting some dots that's taken me about kind of 2 years to put into play. So we're excited about that. I am, anyway, specifically. All right. Does anybody else have any exposure to nonprofits or anything of that nature? If so, reach out, uh, chime in the chat room. I'd like to thank everybody for participating. Dan of SATX, uh, hopping in the chat. Cool, welcome. Thanks for coming by to participate. He apparently also works for nonprofits, so that's good to hear. Really, I mean, if we can't figure out how to solve problems as a veterans community, we're not effectively communicating. We have some of the most ingenious people around that can figure things out. And as we come out of the Army, come out of the Navy, come out of the Marines, come out of the Air Force, and we go our separate ways, and we start to integrate into the civilian sector and business community, we should carry forth that fraternal connection to veterans to help us move the ball further down the field, giving opportunities to people who sacrificed their time on the front end of their career to go out. All right, I guess there's some chatter in the background. One of my dogs is snoring. Maybe that's it. Don't forget the Space Force babies. That's right. How are they even getting into the space? Were they transitioning out of the Air Force? I don't know. That was like right as I was hanging up my pickle suit for the last time. So I'm not sure exactly if you can enlist directly into the Air Force now or Space Force. Kind of weird. Are there any Space Force people out there participating in this discussion? Please let us know. We're curious. All right. Some of the other, just kind of rambling here, nonprofits, local area stuff. We have one of my community members runs a nonprofit for helping homeless veterans, partners with people discarding gently used RVs and rehabs and brings them back to life and shares them with the veteran community to keep them from having to be homeless anymore. So let me find that link and I will share that information. So if you have a gently used mobile home and would like to help with sharing that as a part of your disposal process, reach out and they would love to connect with you to help you. Wow, having a pickle of a time finding that just yet because I'm on the clock, I guess. I don't know. I'll get to that when we get to one of the breaks. Okay, it looks like Dan says a lot of folks transition out of all four branches into the Space Force, but now you can enlist directly. Go through boot camp at Lackland now. Yeah, I figured it would be tied to transition with Air Force. But yeah, like I said, thanks for coming by. Really excited to get some interactive feedback and things of that nature with the show. But what about your transition? How was like you coming out of the military and segueing into the GS pool? If you don't mind sharing with that, there's a few of us that have aspiring interests to do that as well. So, all right. Successful stories. Okay, so next thing, kind of talk about some of the VA home loan guarantees and things of that nature. I bought 4 houses with my VA note, which was really streamlined. Once you've done it once, the second and subsequent loans become really easy to get through. If you haven't had the opportunity to do that, maybe with the economy and the shape that it is, maybe now is not the greatest time to buy a home, but uh, uh, the stores of value for homes will continue to maintain their worth for the time being. So, all right. So, does anybody have any exposure to like some additional uh, spouses and children's uh, programs that are supporting veterans? I'm not too familiar with anything other than the good old military one source. Ooh, nice little transition plan for you, Dan. Go to Iraq with the army as a civilian. Whew. Contracting is definitely something that crossed my mind as well when I transitioned. I was a former action guy. I did a thing or two, a time or two, and that's natural for most of my ilk to kind of work into that category. I just wanted to seek something a little bit different to grow in a different direction as a person. I was kind of also unpacking some post traumatic stress stuff at the time of my transition, so that further helped me want to shift my employment opportunities outside of that space. All right. Well, I think that pretty much just about covers all of the programs and supporting veterans with their families discussion for segment 2. Oh, Sakir Stuttgart, that's a good one. um, that would be a really fun assignment. I've had plenty of good times over there at Patches. Uh, when I passed through, when I was an enlisted guy, we supported Eastern Europe and North Africa. Post transition to the warrant course, I transitioned to a regional orientation of Asia. So had a good fast run with the Germany experience. Anyways, it was quite an adventure. It's pretty hectic over there right now with all the comings and goings with Ukraine, things of that nature. All right. So this next segment, we'll transition to start just kind of picking the scab with some mental health, talking about post traumatic stress and TBI. Uh, Diagnosed with PTSD as part of my transition physical with the VA. And mild TBI from a traffic accident and a handful of concussions. Hi. Hello. Is the other? I think we're toggling back and forth between. Not sure if we're working it. I think we're either back or we're not. Look like I see movement. Yeah. I have the opportunity to rely on internet that's not the greatest where I'm at. So from time to time, my connection dips out. Usually, Sean is the one that hosts the stream, I'm just a participant on his internet feed, which seems to be a little bit better. But looks like we're back through the wickets now, anyway. So that's good. All right. Like I said before, we kind of lost our connective tissues there. I mean, next segment of the show, we'll kind of transition, talk about some post traumatic stress and TBI. Like I said, my post traumatic stress, I am rated at the VA as part of my transition, and I've had a TBI from an auto accident, a couple concussions from uh, this, that, or the other, free fall, hard landings, and static line hard landings, things like that. Uh, and it kind of really changes the way you interact with everything. I don't. All right, looks like Dan's gonna join us during your time here in the interaction. Dan, appreciate it. We'll be back. We're running, going to try and run till 1, pending the signal strength. So, like I was saying, it kind of changes the way you interact with people and uh, about living your daily life. It doesn't have to be uh, too much different, but there are nuances that take some getting used to. Um, uh, First things first, go talk to somebody. That's always the most important thing is start a dialogue on where you're facing some challenges, and figure it out, man. Because there's a lot of helpful tools that they can use when they're applying these therapies. Prolonged exposure was one of the first types of therapies that I went through. It was really helpful. We just focused on one incident that I was consistently kind of like going back to with some intrusive thoughts. We ended up having it was during like Dan's Iraq story. It was in Iraq. Dropped my surveillance team off during the initial invasion out towards the Syrian border, and we got into some contact and ended up breaking contact for the majority of the night while the helicopters turned around and came and picked us up. That kind of yeah messed me up a little bit. So we did some prolonged exposure therapy on that. Um, there was a lot of like gaps in some of my recollections with the story, but repeatedly going over the same instance with guided therapy and talking through it with my therapist really helped me kind of bring out some of the other parts of the story that I was having challenges coming back with, and it kind of like filled in some of the gaps to reduce those intrusive thoughts, and it seems to be working. And kind of they were uh, indicating that would kind of like permeate its way across a couple of those other stories that impacted me in that same manner. I mean, over 23 years in the Army, you're going to go through a few crazy things. So, like as time goes on, you get a little bit more comfortable with like thinking about some of those stories and intrusive thoughts and things of that nature. Um, and the prolonged exposure therapy has seemed to have worked. Like now, some of those other uh, memories that would wake me up from nightmares and things like that in the middle of the night aren't as prevalent, and I can think about them in a different capacity where without it being so demanding of my thoughts and behaviors and attentions and activities. So it kind of helps you uh, identify some triggers that you're kind of going through in some of those regards uh, when you're doing the prolonged exposure therapies, and as you become aware that you start to get a little bit of tachycardia, your muscles get tight, weird things that are specific to each individual. As you become more aware of that, you're able to determine where those or what's causing that behavior, and you can kind of use the some ABC, your intrusive thoughts. You can kind of change the way uh, you allow them to participate with what you're doing on a daily basis. All it starts with kind of like overcoming the stigma and just figuring out that you need to talk to somebody first, man. If you don't talk to anybody as a part of your transition, you're going to be stuck with some unhealthy habits, and those unhealthy habits will generally dictate some uh, behaviors that you'll exhibit that will drive people bonkers. My wife could probably have a whole separate 2-hour show daily on all of my little nuances that I deal with, um, from just my anticipation of things disrupting me or my schedule or things like that. So overcoming, getting people to overcome the stigma is one of the things that we're hoping to do by providing this interactive community in the game with them, Frontlines, so that you can like get with like-minded people when you're chilling out playing a video game to kind of like share some of those more challenging opportunities. So um, we're trying to build in layered solutions to some pretty complex things, but removing that stigma helps really start the quest for finding out how to fix yourself. Because while the VA and the Army and the Navy and the Marines and the Air Force and all those guys have a plan for helping people transition, that plan is it's a bulk solution to a pretty complex problem that doesn't fit everybody the same way. So if you can provide your own tailored solution by seeking additional assistance and just talking with providers, the VA is a great resource to start your journey in that wellness discussion. So I mean, there's next opportunity kind of explores like the emerging resources for therapies available to veterans. There's like the multiple different therapeutic modes and therapies uh, that are designed to help veterans specifically transition um, the way they think about life. It's it's always difficult to to kind of hash out how to set up a roadmap for somebody to help themselves, but figuring out that change is drinking when I wasn't paying attention to my post traumatic stress. Um, so it's just uh, providing bad habits the opportunity to permeate when I wasn't in stress. Not to say that everybody falls prey to the same or same opportunity, but um, strongly encourage you to talk to somebody. It helps with understanding and acceptance that you do have new variables that interact with how you participate in life. So getting to know those a little bit better is never a bad thing. Uh, okay, can we take a quick moment to orient this next right. So we'll talk outside of this. I got 1,000 different things going on in my head at the same time. We're trying to grow. I'm start an accelerator program with the Founders Institute, also veteran related, which is neat. I mean, just kind of uh, been preparing for that because that starts on Tuesday next week. So lots are uh, drifting into preparation mode because I don't like to not be fully prepared to start a new opportunity. So I got that going on. With that veterans opportunity, it's really cool because we're taking the game and the wellness aspects into the video game domain. We get to do a lot of homework and figure out if there's anybody else in that space, and there's not really a whole lot just yet. So we're pretty early with integrating therapeutics into video games, but that's a pretty common language for the veteran population. I grew up with a Nintendo in my room, and games have always been, in some form or fashion, a part of all the deployments that I've participated in to kill some spare time. So it's a common language that we can reach out and touch some of these other veterans who aren't getting the help that they know is available. Uh, we're Sean and I are always doing some, overthinkers, just kind of thinking through like some of the most challenging people to connect with are the people who do a single enlistment contract and go do a deployment, come back from that deployment, and transition right out of the military. They don't have that uh, depth of the military industrial complex to support some of those transition habits that you need longer term to kind of deal with some of the darker points in humanity that you deal with on deployments. So that's where I think video games can kind of like mine some of those gaps. Some of the younger audience, 23, 25, 27-year-old age range that did the single rotation to Afghanistan on a fire base out in the Logman province. That was just them, and that was it. Those are the people that I'm always the most concerned about. We'd always run through some smaller fire bases in Afghanistan to kind of go help take the offense to some of those remote locations where they were just designed to sit around and play defense. So we'd always, I was at the time, my last rotation, I was an 18 Fox. So that was operations intelligence NCO on an ODA. So you kind of get to plan your target deck in that regard, and what areas you want to influence at the ODA team level to kind of like sort out some specifics. And we had the RC East regional assets as a partner force when I was over there, so we would always try and influence those battle spaces that were hosting those infantry companies out by themselves in the middle of nowhere. So it was always entertaining for me to go hang out with those dudes and interact with them and lighten their burden a little bit. But those transitioning guys that get out after one tour, two tours, they don't get the full exposure to the recovery process. Some people just don't really pay attention to the recovery process while they're in either. So wait until you transition out of the military, not the most cogent method for going about it. But luckily, I took the last year. I was in the service to kind of like do some personal development and figure out that I needed to like prepare myself to not have any of these infrastructure there to support me anymore once I transitioned out of the military. So that worked out well for me. All right. So, sorry, this. Go ahead and get back on track here with this segment for education and employment opportunities. That's really a rehash of the same one, so we'll just continue to talk through some of that stuff. Uh, Updates on the GI Bill. Is anybody using the GI Bill? Has anybody seen any changes? Like I said, I kind of serve as a mentor for someone in my local area, and he called and hit me up yesterday. He's like, "Hey, man, this is the amount I was getting before. Then I get in to rectify my VA uh, paperwork within the system, and they sent me a letter saying this is how much I'm going to get now. What's the deal with that?" And he wasn't aware of like the cost of living allowance adjustments that occur regularly. So we kind of talked through some of the COLA situation and how that will continue to go up or down depending on how much it costs to live in a particular area for where he's going to school. Um, these benefits are subject to funding at the congressional appropriation level. Most of the uh, long money has been programmed into that budget for quite some time, so it shouldn't change a whole lot. But there are updates and amendments and additions to all of these specific GI or VA programs that fall within Chapter 31, Chapter 33, educational tracks. There's also some additional Montgomery GI Bill legislation that went through not too awful long ago, where you can get some of that money back if you had to transition to the post 9/11 as a part of your educational experience. Definitely do some. Oh, there we go. 10-year limit expired June 2016. Oh, Dan's back from his meeting. I had used. I had a break-in service originally. The Army, in all of its infinite wisdom, told me that I was going to go be a drill sergeant. I said, thanks, but no. So I went and finished my undergraduate degree, again, computer science degree. And then I had the opportunity to come back online, full-time status for the National Guard, where I did that. And then I got my graduate degree and finished that in 2016 while I was still actively in the Army. I'm a moderator. Cool. Yeah, so if anybody needs any help, Dan of SATX is the way to go for aligning veterans with benefits, including educational track. That's awesome, Dan. I have to connect outside of the show and chew the fat so I can get the download a little bit more if you're available or agreeable to that. All right. I do not think we're going to run this thing for the 2 full hours. Yeah. I think we're going to get ready to hit a hard break here at 11:50 for do a quick little 3-minute break, and we can regroup and keep on keeping on. So when we come back from the break, we'll get into let's see, how are veterans thriving in civilian life. Just kind of go through and hit some of those 5 F's that Rick likes to always talk about. Just kind of unpack some of that stuff and figure out how we can just do it better and really connect as a community to resource any problems that we're having. That's a long ways to go. Anybody's got any specific commentary or content they want to highlight or talk about? As always, just hop in the uh, chat thread and we can catch up. Yeah, everybody's, like I said, starting the show. Everybody's kind of on a holiday schedule. Kids are first day back at school tomorrow. Didn't know if we were going to participate today, but I figured I wanted to come in and keep everything rolling and stay on track and get the episodes